Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my product chat series. This time it's a little different. It's a season two. This is the episode one. I am so excited for all of you to watch this series. I have amazing speakers lined up. But thank you so much for all the support I've been receiving, various messages on when I'm posting the next episode. I know it took so long, but finally I'm here. I am back with really good speakers, really great series. It's not only good for people who want to get into product management, but also early product managers, senior product managers, and even directors. Without further ado, let's get started. So the very first speaker that I want to introduce you to is Abhay, who is a product leader at Amazon Alexa. He has over 9 years of experience leading AI and ML teams, and the products are basically used by millions of people. I don't want to say too many things right now because there's so many good discussions that are coming your way. So make sure you watch the entire video. Thank you so much, Abe, for being here. I'm really grateful for your time. How about we start with your journey towards product management from start to so far, where you are currently?
Awesome. Super excited to be here, Feda. I can quickly give you a quick backdrop of my journey into product management. So I have a bachelor's in technology in computer science. So it would feel obvious that a career in technology is no different from where I come from. But for me, it was actually very different because it was an interesting pivot to product management. Coming out of college, I had no idea what product management was. Something that I was absolutely crystal clear was that I don't want to be a software engineer coming out of computer science degree. So I'd interviewed at a couple of firms for various roles. QA was probably one of the hot roles that one could take at that point in time. Um, I was actually lucky enough to land a role as a business analyst, as a technical business analyst with the S&P, Standard& Poor's. So this role was a mix of stakeholder communication, understanding internal business stakeholders' needs, and building products with tech teams around those needs. Um, so that's how I ventured into the area of product management. And then there was a gradual pivot in S&P
Okay.
where the business analysts actually took up the role of product managers or like pseudo product managers, where you're actually interacting, thinking about the products. I spent about a couple of years in S&P working on document processing products, shipped a ton of new internal products, mostly on for our internal teams to process information from financial documents. This is around about the time in India where the startup scene was really growing,
Following on.
and I was on that bug where let me go and figure out what this space is really. So I joined 1MG, which is now acquired by Tata, and it's one of the largest healthcare e-commerce platforms in out of India. I spent a year at 1MG doing their PWA products, their business B2B documents products, and their API product. Something around that time, I felt that there's some skills that are still missing from my armory. Like I was very fluid working with tech teams, but I felt that there's a significant gap in understanding pricing, some aspects of business fundamentals, and design, which is where I saw the need to go to CMU, where I did my master's in product management.
Mhm.
Um, and as a part of the product management program, I learned a lot of the business fundamentals, learned a ton about pricing, user experience design. It was like the perfect mix of covering those fundamentals. And then stepping out of B school, having learned this humongous amount of
Yeah.
non-product management stuff, I was like, I can experiment a little bit and do something outside of product management. So um, I took up the retail leadership development program at Amazon. Just to give you a bit of context about this program, this is a post MBA program at Amazon where you join as a post MBA. You have two rotations that you can pick from. The first rotation I took up was category management. At Amazon, category managers are called senior vendor manager. My first category that I took up was musical instruments, where I managed the entire business for about a year, which is like you're essentially managing the entire category. So negotiating contracts, buying products, looking at selection, managing profitability, and the entire P&L of that particular category. Really enjoyed that role. It's a fascinating business, the retail front at Amazon, and realized that my heart is still in building products. And that's what brought me to Alexa. Over the past 3 years, I have been doing product management for Alexa, and where currently I am responsible for re-architecting the brains of Alexa. Uh, so you'll soon hear more about the new Alexa and what's shaping up and coming up for Alexa as well.
Interesting journey. I have so many questions on it. When we are going
Yeah,
over like someone's profile, like my opinion was like, okay, you have so much experience, but now what I'm hearing from you, there's like so much diverse experience as well. So would love to know more
yeah,
about your journey. How about we start with the technical part? Like you mentioned that you didn't want to go towards the software engineer route, and you were sure that you want to be like a product manager at that time. Um, First of all, why not software engineering and why product management and how important technical skills are for a product manager?
yeah. So at least from my perspective, uh, I would say right out of engineering college, I wasn't sure that I want to be a product management. I didn't even know that that term existed. What I was absolutely sure about was I am good at understanding how to build products. I understand the technical aspects of how these products would work, and I could work with people. Like I was a good communicator. I'd been on the debating front. I'd been at various Model United Nations. I was very comfortable talking to people and understanding that aspect. So I was very sure that it's either going to be consulting or it's going to be somewhere around that spaces of where you're a business analyst or project management, those kind of courses, those kind of routes. So that's where my inclination was. On the second part of your question, and the technical, like how important is the technical aspect for PMs? I'd say PMs are not necessarily, or PMs don't have to be very technically uh, adept to be successful in their roles. I think what PMs have to be really, really good at is understanding the problems that they're solving. Sometimes, if your product is very technical, you need to understand how that product really works. And it's not necessary that you had need an engineering degree or you need a ton of coding experience to really understand how that product is really working. The more you ask, I think a lot of people preach about the five whys and asking a ton of questions. As PMs, you have to be really, really good at introspecting and asking the right amount of questions, whether it's your technical teams, whether it's your marketing teams, whether it's your finance teams, whether it's your sales and sales and counterpart teams. You just have to be really, really good at inspecting and then asking the right questions so that you can get or guide them to the right decision making. Um, a lot of times you acquire that on the job. So I wouldn't say a technical background is 100% necessary for excelling in the PM role.
Interesting. Okay, I love that. We'll hold on to that thought. So basically, I hear from a lot of people. So I was from a non-technical background before I got into product management. So, and at that time, I realized, okay, maybe if I'm working on AI or ML product, then yes, similarly to what you just said, I would need to know, okay, how the things are working behind me. And if it's like a non-technical background, a product, then it's like a different case. If someone is coming from a non-technical background, non-technical degree, how would you describe, or what could be a roadmap for them to brush up their skills?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. If somebody's coming from a non-tech background and onboarding to a technical product, I'd say a couple of fundamentals that one should be aware of is the basics of technology, especially when you're working with an AI ML product. So just very comfortable with understanding what our model is supposed to do, what are the ins and outs of those models. Um, and when I say this is like very basic level understanding of how these models really work. So instead of going to the math piece of it, which if you know is great, but just having an applied understanding of what these models are supposed to do. So what are the inputs in these cases? What are the outputs in these cases? What are the guardrails?
Mhm.
And also being very, very fluent with how and what of that data is consumed by that model. That
Right.
is 100% something that the PM should be very, very familiar with. The aspects of other things in technology where like things about so do you know the ins and outs of how APIs would work or how distributed systems will work or how CDNs would work. I would say those are things that are good to know, but
Okay.
not necessarily needed.
Mhm.
My approach has always been like if I'm onboarding to a new product
Mhm.
and I know nothing about that product, I would spend my first couple of days sitting down with the developer, SDM, whoever technically sound person that I could find,
Mhm.
and just whiteboard like how things really work and like very basic understanding of like, hey, how do we process this X thing? Like, how does this system work? And just whiteboard this with the particular developer. The way to internalize that, and in my opinion, is to create some high-level diagrams from yourself. Like once you've condensed all of that information, but with that whiteboarding session, create like an end-to-end diagram to say, hey, this is the flow of this product. This
Right.
is how the information flows. This is where it interacts with X system.
Mhm.
This is how customers work with that, and this is what is happening behind the scenes. Once you have that very basic understanding, and it's a shared understanding because you're not supposed to be an expert, you're just supposed to know how this will work so
Right.
that when you're in the room with developers, and especially as a technical product person, you're influencing a lot of technical trade-off decisions, and your ability to inspect will always be better if
Mhm.
you understand some of the specifics of like, hey, what if we think about this in this way? Will there be some limitations to this? Does it impact our ability to scale? Is latency something that is going to be paramount? So thinking about those things become like second nature once you're able to understand like just how information is flowing into the system. Does that make sense,
Yes, it does.
Pratap?
Yeah. That was the other part to the question as well. Like what could be like a 30, 60, 90 days plan once you enter the company? I think you already mentioned about, sitting with the developers, sitting with the DevOps team and, speaking to them, creating that whiteboard. But what could be the plan going forward if we speak about like a proper roadmap of 30, 60, 90?
Yeah. If you think about a 30, 60, 90-day roadmap for any PM,
Mm-hmm.
um, the first 30 days, in my opinion, you should spend understanding the customer.
Okay.
What are their common uh, behaviors is the right term that I would like to use. So the behaviors of customers are some things that you want your users to do more of, which will drive success for your product. So these are things that drive product success. Like for example, I work for Alexa Audio, where I want my users to request more music content, audio content, books, radio, podcast, have longer, uninterrupted listening sessions,
Right.
which is they enjoy listening to music. They enjoy the diversity of music. And when I say music, I also mean other audio contents. And then the aspects of that they don't have a disappointing experience where music suddenly stops playing. So these are the behaviors that I always anchor on any product that I go on. The second aspect of behavior is actually what metrics do you use to measure those behaviors,
Right.
which is the data or the analytical part of it. Like, hey, what metrics do we care about? Like, for example, what is a successful listening session? So somebody could argue like a session which is greater than 30 seconds is a strong signal that a customer actually got what they were asking for, and they are enjoying the session that they are having. And then you can look at other aspects of like defects. So then you can measure the defect rate, you can measure fault rate, you can also measure like customer feedback to those, like rephrases, them coming in and interrupting Alexa. All of those metrics then understand your influence your ability to understand the behavior and then draft the next steps of how you think about it. So first 30 days I really focusing on the behaviors and the metrics aspect of it, and then looking at the 60-day plan is like once you have a strong handle of this, is looking at what are the quick metric movements or like strategic wins that you can deliver ASAP. um, so there's a lot of those things where you can find where even a small improvement on an X metric is going to give you like a Y improvement on some certain metric. Like for example, if you implement a small change, like for example, in our music journey,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, if you implement an autoplay,
Yeah.
which is like once you're requested a track and then second track's playing starts playing automatically, which is relevant to the request that you'd already made. It's a very small change in the context of the entire journey, but from an impact standpoint, it creates a ton of impact because it improves your overall listening session length. It improves the overall ability to sustain the conversation. It removes the friction where customer has to come in and request certain things. So these are like small improvements that you can quickly identify. Those will give you compounding effects in the future. And then you look at hill hops or like strategic things which will actually move the product in like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. So those I look at 90 days, because 60 days is where it like these small wins. One, it helps you understand the culture
Mm-hmm.
of like product development and building and shipping end to end.
Right.
It helps you also contextualize like what I've done is also demoable and builds the right amount of people capital. So people understand that, hey, this person, this PM understands the specifics and can deliver results. And then it amplifies your ability to like deliver more things because you're building that people capital on the side.
Makes sense. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it comes down to, thinking about the customer part on how what they are getting at the end
Yeah.
from the
100%. Yeah.
Um, so thinking about the first 30 days, you mentioned about the data part. So you mentioned that you will be looking at the data, how and different metrics. But going forward, like after 90 days as well, for a big company like Amazon, how much do they look at the data to make to make their decisions?
I think Amazon is probably, and again, I've not been at other
Mhm.
span companies to comment on them, but I think Amazon's very data oriented. There's a huge push for understanding data.
Mhm.
measuring customer actions, customer behaviors, and actually quantifying them into metrics. There's a concept at Amazon which I absolutely love is inputs versus output metrics. And pre-Amazon, I would never think about metrics in that way. But post-Amazon, I would say I would never look at metrics and not think them about this way. So the concept here is the input metrics are the metrics that you can control in a product. So think of this as like the knobs in the AI world, where like if you change something, you directly see an impact. Like for example, in the retail world, you can't control how much products customers will buy. So if you have a metric like revenue, what this will tell you is, okay, great, my revenue is growing, but can I control that on an everyday basis? What is the input metric to that? The input metric to that is, do I have the product in stock? So that's a great input metric to track. Is like if I'm able to improve my in-stock product rate,
Mhm.
that will eventually have an impact on my revenue because more products in stock, customers are not going to see an out of stock message. That is going to drive more orders. More orders would mean more revenue. So those are the kind of mental models that you learn at Amazon is to focus on the input metrics versus the output metrics because output metrics are going to be a function of those input metrics, but those are not necessarily the things that you can control. So again, being very, very thoughtful about the input metrics and then working backwards from those input metrics. There's also very a lot of rigor in inspecting these metrics. So there's forums like weekly business reviews or monthly business reviews where we actually get into a room and bridge these metrics, which is also a term which is very Amazonian.
Yeah.
And a lot of other companies, I don't know if they follow it or not, but at Amazon, these weekly business reviews are to understand where the data is trending. So, for example, there are 10 metrics that are really, really important to your team. Every week, we'll sit down with the leaders where leaders would actually inspect a metric. Like, for example, if you're talking about, say, retail out of stock or our defect rate at Alexa, and that defect rate or the retail out of stock was X% and it's now X plus 1% this week. Where is that 1% delta coming from? Either it's good, bad, whatever. Like it could be in the positive direction, it could be in negative direction, but you leaders are expected, or like PMs are expected, or business leaders are expected to bridge that gap. Like, hey, this 1% is being driven by X, Y, and Z. At Amazon, there's also great rigor in bridging, which is an art. So at Amazon, we say if you're not able to explain a change
Yeah.
by 80%, then you're not explained the change.
Wow.
So if it's a 1% change and you can actually tell that this change is being driven by Y behavior and that contributes to 80% of that change, then it's the right, which is again the common principle of causation versus correlation. So
Right.
we want to differentiate causation versus correlation, and correlation leads to just like a bunch of faff, which is not actual thing that is driving that change. So you want to find causations. Causations are the thing that move the metric. So you have to be very, very clear on like very small little changes which are actually driving that. And those, once you get very familiar with that, those are the things that actually give you a lot of insights into um, what is actually moving that metric from a behavior standpoint,
Right.
and how can you actually influence that metric in the right direction and get out of that rut. Another quick concept that I've seen at Amazon and I swear by it is
Mhm.
rate versus mix. Again, uh, it's a great analytical way to understand. Like for example, a metric increase from X% to X plus 1%, that 1% change is there, but is it rate driven? Is it mix driven? So rate driven is, if you understand from the analytics terms, it's something that is driven by the numerator, because every metric is a numerator divided by a denominator. Um, so a rate-driven change is actually a change in some pattern. Um, a mix-driven change is something which is driven by, say, seasonality, is driven by change in behaviors, like somebody's ordering more diapers versus more byproduct, like whatever.
Yeah,
So that those are like mix-driven changes, trying to understand what is actually rate-driven changes, because rate-driven changes are things that you can go and impact and then change something in your input metrics to ensure that the right behavior is achieved. Whereas mix-driven changes are mostly seasonality-driven things that are harder to control. So then you are able to even differentiate between the causation part of it and differentiate the fluff from the actual things that you can focus on.
makes sense. So when we talk about like comparing and thinking about the correlation and causation, do we think about like A/B testing as well? Does A/B testing help just to figure out that part?
It does. It does. I think A/B testing. Usually, A/B testing is on a feature that we would think that would impact. Uh, so, for example, if I have a hypothesis that changing an X behavior
Yeah.
would lead to a Y metric change.
Mhm.
So a Y metric change, like how we do it at Amazon, is we'll run an experiment with the control treatment, like the usual control treatment. Um, the way that we would measure causation is by looking at statistical significance. So if there is a change in a Y metric, and then that Y metric, you give it enough bake time, and then based on that bake time, usually it depends upon the kind of experiment for it to reach like a critical mass of statistical significance. That's where we would get into some amount of causation into differentiating the treatment that we've given. Like mostly at Amazon, we'd run at least 2 to 3 different treatment groups so that we can differentiate between the behaviors and actually get to the causation piece of it versus just mere correlation.
Right. Okay, makes sense now. Thank you so much for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um,
awesome.
Now let's move towards a little bit more behavioral part. What skills do you think are necessary to be a PM? And if you were to hire someone, what skills or what background do you look for in a candidate?
Right. I think for PMs, the number one skill, at least when you're starting off, like a associate PM, senior PM, is your ability to dive deep through data.
Okay.
I would say that's um, in a skill that you can't um, discount in under any circumstances. So the first thing that I look at is candidates' ability to understand data,
Mhm.
identify the right metrics, and identify the things that are actually going to move the behaviors in the right way, and then also identify the right data to act on. The other thing that I highly value in PMs is their ability to work with people
Yeah.
and foster relationships and earn trust. I think one of this is the hardest skill to have as PMs because your ability to value these relationships is super important. The reason why I say that is also because it's very difficult to create trust. And for you to be successful as a product manager, you have to foster those trusts. So the way that I look at it, can you do what you say you will do, and do you do it by the time? Like if I say, hey, I'm going to meet you at 5 p.m. And we'll have X for you. Can you deliver on those promises consistently? Because those are the things that build trust. And
Right.
once you have trust, the other person as an open door of communication with you, and then it fosters innovation because there's free flowing information, and that really helps PMs grow because a lot of our job is just working with people and then
Right.
extracting information out from so many sources. So that is a skill that I 100% look out for. Another thing for entry level PMs, especially in those roles, is their ability to seek out new experiences and be open to learning. Because a lot of these cases, in especially in these highly complex and diverse products, there's a lot of things which are unknown. And unless you have that knack to go out and search for things, for information, for the right set of people, to find the information that you're looking for, you're often not going to get the results that you want to seek. So that is another skill that I highly value in, especially in like entry level PMs.
Makes sense. So basically dealing with ambiguity, data oriented, and then people's person, like more of a communicator, a good communicator.
I'd say more than you can be a great communicator, but
Mm-hmm.
then unless you're able to win trust with people, your communication skills can only take you so far. Um, the trust factor of that is only established when there is a mutual exchange of respect, and that respect will come from your ability to deliver value not only to your customers but
Mm-hmm.
also to the people that you work with.
I agree. Yeah. So for example, let me ask you for a suggestion. So for example, a lot of the early PMs, they're very early in their career. They might be like in their um in their 20s or early 30s. What and when they're dealing with so many people, like simultaneously leading a team of 20 to 25 people, like that includes UI UX designers, software engineers, and more. Maybe they might be elder than the early PM or the associate PM. That's what happened with me. And for the first 90 days, it was very difficult for me to build the trust, and they were not very open to, take me in just because I was very young. How do you think, eventually I was able to make my space there, but how do you think in the first 90 days I could make my space in that company and build that trust between the team members?
Yeah, there's a ton of things that one could do to build that trust. I think a lot of it actually boils down to your body of work. So
Mm-hmm.
I 100% would not discount your actual work that you will ship because that creates a lot of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in your first 90 days, I understand that that might not be something that is very easily achievable. So
Right.
hence I anchor on like understanding the behaviors, documenting those in your shared understanding. Like, hey, this is my understanding of the product, socializing it where it builds some amount of credibility,
Okay.
some amount of cloud that, hey, Rufeda is this person who spent a bunch of time documenting our key metrics, our key users, behaviors, and then understanding certain aspects of the products. And this is her take on these things. Um, Finding some new nuggets of like things that you can ship are also fantastic. Now, the harder part of how do you build the right set of relationships with these people, I think people love to talk about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you talk to any individual, uh, like even before you get to the work, I think first is understanding what the person is all about from a personal aspect. Like for example, I had this practice early on where I would give very small nuggets of information about everybody on my team, like their pet's name, their kid's name, any special information, like if somebody's like somebody loves to play guitar in their free time, has a YouTube channel, I would actually have some track of that information. Whenever I would meet them, I would ask them, hey, how's your pet X doing, or like building those small
Personal
things where it's
connection.
which creates that personal level of interaction with that person,
Right.
where they value that you remembered a piece of information that they shared with you, and then you start to build on top of that. The second most important thing is flipping the narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and flipping the narrative about not like how can they help you,
Yeah.
and thinking about how can you help them,
Agreed. Yeah.
being very very open and very sometimes even vulnerable, to say, hey, I am struggling with the next thing. Can you help me with this? Before you go in do that, the other aspects of it is understanding what in their aspects moves some of their motivations. Like for example, if you're working with a sales person, you understand their personal aspects of it, but also understanding their team aspects of it. Like, what are the things that their team is measured on? What is the metrics that they are anchored on? What is their goals for the next 1 year? What are they trying to achieve? Like, what does success look like for them? And then using those information to actually craft a narrative which actually fits the bill.
Yeah.
Third thing in that influence is which I say, even before you go to a bigger meeting,
Mm-hmm.
have these smaller reviews with these set of individuals. Like going up to, like, for example, you have a big product proposal in your first 60 days,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that there's going to be like the product director, the finance director, the sales director, and the legal person. Having those small 30-minute syncs where you do pre-reads with them and getting their takes before the meeting. Like, hey, this is what I feel. This is the doc that I'm presenting, or this is the proposal that I have. I wanted to get your quick feedback. More often than not, these small forums will, one, help you weed out any early signs of indications of like, hey, this is something that you should look out for. And once you go to the actual meeting where you've actually addressed those concerns, that actually builds a lot more trust with them because you've
Right.
acted on their feedback and you've incorporated that feedback in your proposal. And then that fosters a relationship which you can continue to grow and build on.
Love that. Okay, these are like some like really gem advices. I think like anyone, even if the person is not a PM, they can take account on
Yeah,
that.
100%.
Yeah. The next part I want to discuss is the misconceptions. What do you think before you even entered product management, or if you have heard from someone who entered product management, what are the biggest misconceptions even before entering?
Oh, misconceptions. That's a really interesting questions. I think a lot of misconceptions right now that I've, especially around technical product management or like product management in the technical world, is that you need to be really, really good at like the technical concepts. You need to be good at coding. You need to know like how to write SQL queries. You need to be good at designing Figmas, um, or all of these things I say are good to have things, but are not going to be blockers for any PM in their world. Most of the companies you'd actually have dedicated folks helping you do that. Your ability would come into working with these set of people effectively. Like for
Okay.
example, you'll have probably a analyst who can help write SQL queries. Your insight would come into like what is the right thing that we need to measure. How piece is probably something that can be helped by a data scientist or like a data analyst where they can help guide you. The same goes in for like the design aspects of it. Like you more often than not, you'll have a design counterpart who will actually do like the actual wireframing. Um, can you do it? 100% yes. Can you write SQL queries if you know how to do it? I don't say that it's a skill not good to have, but you'll always have support to help you guide through all of those things. The second misconception that I hear a lot is you need to have certifications to get into product management. You need to have CSM, you need to have CSPO, PSPO, product school certification. I feel that it's not at all required. You don't need to have certifications. What you need to have is ability to have a good product sense, which is, can you understand the customer behaviors? Can you understand what kind of um, features would actually accentuate or enhance that customer behavior, and the ability to, look at data and measure that right sense of behavior is much more valued. Whether you do it through a school project, whether you do it through looking at all products existing out there, thinking about what are the behaviors, how is and company X thinking about promoting a Y behavior, and then doing deep dives on that would actually help you a lot more versus, say, taking certifications. Yeah, those are the ones that come up to my mind, and I see a lot of folks actually reach out and say, "Hey, should I do certification?
Yeah.
How much technical background do I need to have to just onboard as a PM?"
Yeah, I don't think certifications are required. Yeah, it's good to have knowledge, but I think you can easily gain that knowledge from either speaking to people or even
Yeah,
like doing on the job work or even like just search online like YouTube. Um I don't think like certifications required to at least get in. Um but let's talk about books or blogs. If you have any favorite resources just to be updated on the field, what do you usually go for?
yeah. I think one of my favorite resources is Strategy by Ben Thompson. I religiously read strategy because I love the aspects of the technical uh, know-how and thinking about how a strategy is folding into the tech aspects of it, and what is the behavior that's being driven by a particular company, by a particular product. I think Ben's really great at teasing out those really complex concepts and simplifying them for the readers. So it gives you a ton of actual real world things that you can think about. I think Lenny's podcast is also one of the recent. I think now everyone thinks about Lenny's podcast as the actual YouTube podcast, but Lenny's also had a newsletter back in the day, which I would say if one is growing as a PM, they should just go back and look at old Lenny's newsletters, archives. I think he's written a bunch of great posts around, especially around platform development.
Mhm.
So those things I would say are great. In terms of books, like there's a ton of books out there. I think some things that I highly recommend is Innovator's DNA. That one should 100% read just to get an understanding about building products, thinking about feature development. I think another great resource that I would recommend for anybody entering into this space is reading about platform strategy. Another great basics about how platforms are built, what are the basic fundamentals of value exchange between platforms. Those are the things that help you contextualize, because every great product out there right now is platform. So understanding that very basics of that platform is essential. Um, Other than that, I would say I right now listen to the daily AI podcast,
Okay.
which helps me just get a 15-minute rundown of what's happening in the world of AI, because the pace at which AI development is going right now, it's very difficult to keep a track of everything. I think the daily AI podcast condenses all of that information and makes it easily understandable. So I definitely recommend for somebody in that space to know about AI.
Great resources. Love that. Definitely. Like I did not know about the last one. I definitely want to see that. Um, the last question for you is if anyone who wants to get into, for example, in any tech space within Amazon, if you have like any suggestions, I know you moved into this role a couple of years ago. What suggestions would you have for someone who wants to get into Amazon?
Yeah, I'd say Amazon's interviewing process is pretty straightforward. There's a ton of resources out there.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't want to be repeating a bunch of things, which is like, yeah, just you need to be focused on the leadership principles. I think that's 100% given that Amazon is probably one of the companies that highly anchored on the leadership principles. And a lot of the interviewing process is actually behavioral versus, say, system design, product design. So the way that Amazon interviewing process is structured is you will actually get questions which are behavioral questions, and then the interviewer would actually dig out nuggets of information out of those stories that you have. So they would ask questions around your technical competence, your product sense, your functional understanding about trade-offs, and your ability to work through data. So all of those questions would actually be deep dive of the work that you've done in your past. So one of my mental models is whenever you look at a story for Amazon, the guidance that I have is if you can talk about a story
Mm-hmm.
for 40 minutes without anybody interrupting you, that's a good story to have for Amazon because you have the right amount of depth to know different aspects of that particular story. Um, and especially it's something that you've already done, so you can talk about more of that in that sprints. The common mental model that I have is you should know about three major things about the past things that you've done. First is the product aspect of it. Like, who are you building this product for? Why is it important to build? Why now? Like, as PMs, we get a lot of problems that we need to solve, but there's also some gravity aspect of it. Like, if I don't solve this problem now, then there's going to be a Y impact, Z impact, K impact. So contextualizing the product aspects of decision making in that sense, and then thinking about like what are the metrics that I was using to drive that behavior, which is pure product play in that sense. The second thing that I recommend people to do is understand the people aspect. Like, who did you have to convince to get success? Were there any pushbacks from the key set of people? How did you navigate and convince those set of people? Did you have to influence a certain stakeholders? How were you able to do that? And the third aspect, which I highly recommend, is thinking about the data aspects of it. Is like what kind of data were you looking at? Were you looking at qualitative data? Were you looking at quantitative data? What are the insights that you draw from that? Were there any uh, causation versus correlation aspects in that data that you were able to weed out? How did you analyze that data? How did you come up with some hypothesis based on that data? And then finally, out of all these three things, the two things that I also recommend is scalability. Like, how did you scale? Like, most of the times, people just think about like 10 users to 100 users to 1,000 users. I'm more concerned about how do you take it from 1,000 users to say 10 million users? Did you think about scale? Did you look at ways to scale your knowledge, your impact, your processes? All of that is highly, highly valuable.
Love that. Like I love the breakdown. Like you mentioned, like three different steps. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lastly, I just wanna, if any, like whoever is listening to this podcast, if they want to speak with you, how can they do that?
Yeah. So anybody who's looking to reach out to me, they can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. I think, Rafael,
I
you
mean,
can add that
yes.
in the link. Um, you can also book a session with me on TopMate.
Mhm.
Spend some amount of my time speaking to aspiring PMs, helping them with mock interviews, or just answering their regular career guidance questions at TopMate. where I help them just navigate through any challenges or questions that they are having. So those are the two channels that people can reach out to me.
Great, perfect. And lastly, thank you so much, Abhay, for answering all these questions. This was so insightful. I wish we could go over time and speak more about it, but definitely some advices that I'm going to take forward in my career as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I truly enjoyed the conversation.
Mhm. Thank you.